You're listening to the Strange Oddities Podcast. Please welcome your host, Matthew J. Hopper. This is your podcast for strange things.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Strange Oddities Podcast, live here on both Facebook and YouTube. Guys, as always, in the beginning, let's get that boring stuff out of the way. There's a website. Go to strangeodditiespodcast.wordpress.com. Guys, if you haven't subscribed to the show, please subscribe to our YouTube main page. That little bell at the top right corner of our YouTube channel. Click that little bell. Subscribe to the show. Follow us on Facebook, guys. All information about the show, any guests that I have lined up throughout, the week, or guests that I have every week, all their information and announcements of, special guests I have coming up on the show will be announced on Facebook. So that's where you're going to get all your information. If you want to email me, guys, strangeodditiespodcast@gmail.com. I'm excited tonight, guys. I'm returning live. I'm healthy. I beat COVID. I just, real quick, guys, want to thank everybody who poured in a lot of support for me and my wife who were sick over the last couple of weeks. We're feeling better. I'm happy to be back live here on the show, on the Strange Oddities Podcast. I want to, just thank all of our listeners and all of our people that support Strange Oddities Podcast. Thank you guys so much for your support. I really appreciate that. But we're back. I'm going to introduce this lovely lady that we have tonight. Here we go. Bringing her in. We have Miss Carrie Hopper of History of a Haunting Podcast. It's another podcast crossover here on the Strange Oddities Podcast. Miss Carrie Hopper, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. I love this podcast, and I'm very honored. So thank you so much. And I'm so glad that you and your wife are feeling so much better. COVID has, oh God,
I know.
It's just terrible. So I'm so glad that you guys are feeling better, and welcome back.
Yeah, I'm glad to be back on a couple weeks hiatus. There's just no way I could do the show being sick. Okay. It was just put it this way, it was a nightmare. I don't want to ever go through that again. COVID sucks. I can't wait for everything to be back to normal. I'm like so done with it. I think everybody is. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. All right. So, again, welcome to the Strange Oddities Podcast. Guys, we do have a chat room. If you want to ask questions, ask the guest questions, ask me questions. I'll relay it as best I can throughout the show. There's a chat. It's not much, but it's there. Go on Facebook or YouTube. You could comment there, during the show. We'll try to catch those questions. My lovely wife is in the chat moderating, helping out. So I want to thank her as always. She's in there. Yeah. So, Carrie, all right, where do we begin with this? We met a few weeks back through Entity Voices podcast. Yes. And, we've kind of conversed back and forth a little bit. And, you watched this podcast and you were like, oh, we should do a crossover. And I said, yeah, sure, why not? We all have to support each other with our podcast. That's what we do, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So what got you started in the paranormal? Like, what got you to, I want to be a paranormal investigator. I want to do this. What was your passion behind what you want to do?
Well, I had always known that there was life after death. My grandmother had been visited by her husband in a dream when I was little, and I've grown up with that story. My best friend Jennifer her house is haunted, and so that sort of was sort of my foray into actually experiencing paranormal activity. And kind of like everybody else, I'm a huge fan of all of the paranormal reality shows. Ghost Hunters, I can't get enough of Ghost Hunters. The Holzer Files is another really great one. So when Ghost Hunters, I think, is one of the original shows, when that show came out, I was like, that's what I want to do. I think it is amazing, and I want to learn everything that I possibly can. And that was, 14, 15 years ago that show debuted.
Wow. Yeah. So, it's been out for a while. Yeah.
It's been out for a while. Yeah. So that's kind of where my passion began. And then through pure wonderful fortune, I was able to meet the Entity Voices group, and right. They were able to show me and teach me how to be a paranormal investigator. So.
Right. Yeah. So So you've been how long have you been investigating now?
It has been just over a year.
Okay.
Just over a year that I've actually been going to locations and doing actual paranormal investigations. So
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Well, I thought a great topic, with Carrie's background would be kind of talking about the older generation versus how the newer generation of investigator kind of how they get into the field, how they get taught, how they're brought into the field versus the way we used to do things. So I'm kind of an old school kind of investigator.
Okay,
I've
great.
been doing it, right. I've been doing this for over 20 years. So some of my methods are a little older than the newer methods, and I have to adapt to all the new things going on. So I think, like, my opinion is, for the newer generation, I think is maybe a little bit easier for you guys because we didn't have the technology that we had back then.
Yes.
So maybe it's like a little more easier to be hands-on and with the equipment that's out there and available. What's your thoughts on that?
I really do agree with that. I think that all of the new technology and things that are being developed by some of the foremost folks in the paranormal field is amazing. And I feel like it's only helping to sort of solidify the evidence that is caught with it. But I feel like the tried and true is great on its own, the standalone, the dowsing rods and things that have been used for hundreds of years. I think that those kinds of things shouldn't ever be discounted. I think they can work part and parcel with all of the new technology. So I love the old school technique as well because it's just as efficient as the new stuff that's coming out. So
yeah, sure. I've kind of noticed too that a lot of the newer shows are actually bringing back some of the older methods, like Polaroid cameras and like just some of the old school methods they would use toward their investigating. Like using string or paper, the Singapore theory with playing music and trigger objects, and we didn't have all this technology, so we had to improvise.
Right? Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. I think all that is really wonderful, and I feel like I'm with the Entity Voices group. They're using all of that, so they're kind of mixing all of the the oldies but goodies in with all of this new technology. Especially Tony, who's really fabulous at building his own equipment and boxes and stuff like that. So
he's a super smart guy. Yeah.
God, isn't he? He is amazing. Yeah, but he still really loves the tried and true. I remember the last time I hosted a tour at the Phelps Dodge Hospital in Ajo, there was just bells on strings and just little stuff like that I know has been around for ever and ever. I think that's really wonderful that that the proven ways aren't being kind of left in the dust just because the new and the younger equipment is coming out and
I think also some of the newer stuff is, even though it's advanced in technology now and all the unique experimental equipment everybody's using, it's kind of hard to prove things scientifically with them. So I think, and some of the old school methods, which is applying the scientific method toward control, variable control variables and how you can control the equipment in the environment and where you're using it and stuff like that. So that's what I talk about when it comes to older techniques, applying the scientific method toward the equipment that you're using. And it's kind of hard to do that with certain things because some things are just designed to sit and run, and you just have to wait and listen back and review those things. But
yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that there's a lot of different things that I'm learning in my training with the Entity Voices group that most people don't take into consideration as far as the weather and what's going on outside the location that you're investigating, the barometric pressure, stuff like that, like you said, just kind of using that old school, the scientific method for an experiment and setting it up. And so I'm learning different stuff like that, because I feel like a lot of folks like me that watch all of these amazing paranormal reality shows, they're like, hey, I'm just going to go in with my recorder and this and that, and I'm going to, is anybody here? And I'm going to catch some EVPs. And there's so much more to it.
Sure.
When you're really trying to prove that there is paranormal activity going on in a location, there's so much more to it. There's a lot of training and a lot of education that goes into it.
Yeah.
Far more than just how to use the equipment and what it does. And, so yeah.
I totally agree. Cause again, like there's pros and cons to the TV shows. You love them or you hate them.
Yeah.
I have a love-hate relationship with them myself. There are certain ones I enjoy. There's certain ones I'm just like, it's like banging your head against the wall.
Yeah.
There's just like the do's and don'ts that you do or don't do, and like they're against like some of the things that we stand for, like no whispering in the background, and then they're like, "Did you hear that?" I'm like, "Why are you whispering?" Or like playing music in the background, and then they're asking their audience, "Did you hear or see that?" No,
that is my biggest thing too.
Like you got these effects going on, and it's distracting.
Yeah. And what I find is that some of these shows are either overly theatrical, like you said, the music and we captured this EVP that's super, super quiet. And then their like theme music is playing. And I'm like, I didn't hear any of it. But it kind of, like you said, love, hate, it kind of drives me a little nuts, because some of the evidence that they capture is so compelling and so fascinating. But I'm like, I gotta sit through the whole thing to see that. Like, there's a love hate with that whole.
Yeah, and they don't show the review. Like they do a little bit live review at the time, which is okay, but like they don't like explain to the audience. All right, so behind the scenes, before they actually show their clip of their evidence, it takes like 5 hours to get to that point. So you're sitting there at your computer with your software, with whatever you're using to review, and they don't explain that stuff. So people just think, oh, that's why people think it's so easy just to investigate. But there's so much more to it.
Yeah, there's so much more to it. In fact, I had talked on one of our episodes. It was on the 1910 jail in Globe, Arizona, and I was able to investigate that with Tony and Cherie Rathman. And so then afterward, we had done one of our episodes on it. And I was telling them, I'm like, there's so much that goes into a paranormal investigation that so many people don't realize, because all of that's edited for television. It's edited for the entertainment value. But a lot of sitting in the dark and being quiet went into that, or a lot of walking, especially if you're investigating a large facility, like even maybe Waverly Hills, certainly the hospital down in Ajo. If it's a huge location, there's a lot of walking. There's a lot of setting up the equipment. It's lugging the equipment in from the car. It's very, very physically demanding job.
Yeah.
And there's parts of it that's boring.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of sitting around waiting for stuff to happen. And
right.
It's been such a wonderful eye opener to actually go on a paranormal investigation with professionals to really see how it's done, because like you said, the TV shows don't show that.
Oh yeah, no, totally. So I mean, and sometimes when you're setting up and you're doing all that work prior to the actual investigation, sometimes things happen while those things are happening, because there's a lot of times where we've had stuff while we're setting up or breaking down and nothing's recording, and we're like, why don't we have a camera going? Right?
Yes. Yeah. That's the other thing. I think that like people have this idea that if you're going to go into a location and you've got your EVP recorder and you've got your camera and you've got your FLIR, and that the ghosts are going to be like, oh, they're here. Everybody, come on, let's give them what they're looking for. But they don't cooperate. Like sometimes you get a bunch of stuff, sometimes you don't. I've investigated the Phelps Dodge Hospital a bunch of times, and sometimes there's so much I don't even know where to begin. And other times it's like maybe one or two things. So it's not like you're going to like show up on command.
Right.
And I think that's a misnomer that folks have about it as well. No.
Right. I think, and that's one of the things that do bother me about the shows, because they bring people's expectations really, really high.
Really good to have.
You know, so when people go to a location and want to learn and investigate, if they're newbies, again, like you're saying, you know, they expect like things to happen on demand because of what's edited on the show. But on their behalf, what people don't know is that sometimes production can take days, and
Yes.
they're there a few days before that show is actually aired, and they're there for hours trying to make, you know, something happen and
Right.
have an experience recorded, and you know, so there's that on top of it.
Yeah, and I think especially like you were saying that you have been doing this for 20 years. Well, 20 years ago, there were none of these paranormal reality shows. There was none of this. It was really,
Right.
it was a lot harder to.
Well, we had a couple. We had like Leonard Nimoy in Search of, and we had Unsolved Mysteries, you know.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. But I think it was like, I think it's just, it was so much harder then because you didn't have the internet. You didn't have, you know, reality television as saturated on all of the networks, cable, streaming, everywhere that it is today.
Yeah.
To really be taken seriously, I think, and to, because like you said, there was In Search Of, there was Unsolved Mysteries, and then what else was there? There wasn't really,
not much.
There
Not
wasn't
much.
really much. Yeah.
Oh.
So I really think that with all of the new advances in internet and streaming, and it's only benefited the field.
Yeah, sure.
Gotten more people interested in it, and of course there's always pros and cons with that. But yeah, I just think coming into it now in 2021, 2020, 2021, there's so much equipment and tools and techniques at our disposal for new investigators like myself.
Right.
And I truly hope that anybody that's watching that wants to be a paranormal investigator or that is new to paranormal investigation, that they really take the time to research and they look into how things were done back 20 years ago or even 200 years ago.
Right.
It only adds to your level of expertise and the way that you can apply all of this different stuff and these different techniques.
Yeah, so, for sure.
That's certainly, and you can't go wrong with a little Leonard Nimoy. And
no, you can't.
You know, the guy with the creepy voice. What's that meme about Unsolved Mysteries? There was nothing scarier than this man's voice talking about scary stuff that no one solved.
Yeah, I know.
That shit was amazing.
Yeah, I'm actually really happy that they brought the show back on Netflix, and I watched it on Netflix. I enjoyed it. I thought they did a great job rebooting it, and you know, the narrator I thought was great, and it felt like I was watching the original. I mean, even though it wasn't the same guy, but
sure. What was that? Robert Stack?
Yeah, Robert. Something like that. I think that sounds accurate. I don't know.
Sounds accurate. I can picture him. But the name escapes me. But yeah. So I think as long as we keep all of those tried and true techniques, and we just sort of blend them in with all of the new stuff, I think there's no limit to where this field can go. I have so much faith in it. I have so much faith in the people that are training me and folks like you and these shows. I love these shows. I saw you on Paranormal Night Shift.
Oh, cool.
And I love shows like that because I feel like it really helps people to not feel so self-conscious and not feel so like shy or embarrassed or scared to tell their story. I think shows like you are so, so important.
I really agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree with that. Just to add more input to that. I think me personally, I love shows like that also is because you're sharing your experience that you were genuinely experiencing.
Yeah.
And you're going out into the world and everybody's watching. So you're telling everybody what happened. And I think it's a genuine way of sharing that experience with everybody. And, you know, even though you're being interviewed and you got like a whole production crew in front of you and in back of you, you have all this equipment around you, but you're still there being you.
Right. And you're telling this story that, you know, is still widely today scrutinized and mocked. And I think it's a very brave thing for people to do. And I think shows like this that champion folks that are willing to own the experience that they know happened to them. I think that's really, really important. A friend of mine has a podcast called The Paranormal Burrito, and that's all Caleb does. He just interviews people about their paranormal experiences. He doesn't talk about famous clinicians. He doesn't talk about, anything like that. He just has these guests on that talk about their paranormal experiences. And I think that's so important to kind of blast through the stigma that people have of actually experiencing a paranormal phenomenon, seeing a ghost, or, I think it's so, so important. And I'm so glad that there are shows and podcasts out there like those. It's really amazing.
Yeah, totally. And not only that, like, I don't know if you consider yourself, are you a believer or more of a skeptical believer?
A believer. Yeah.
Now, some skeptics will argue, but their personal experiences, they don't prove anything because, they're just personal experiences.
Sure.
Do I agree they're personal experiences? Yes, but they are eyewitnesses to something they genuinely felt that they experienced. And you will never, I don't care, like, if you're a skeptic, believer, a cynic, or whatever, but you will never recreate that same incident or experience that person had, because that was designed for that person.
Yes.
You'll never recreate that same environment. You'll never recreate that same instance.
Exactly. Yes, it is. And the other thing I think about that with the skeptics, particularly, I guess, mainly the non-believers, skeptics. Right. Okay, sure. But anybody that says that to somebody, I feel like that's such a disrespectful thing to say to somebody, because I feel like it sort of suggests that you think that they're lying, or maybe they had some sort of like delirious moments, or they weren't of like their right mind, or maybe they were dreaming, or maybe it calls into question that person's actual memories. And I think that's such a disrespectful thing to say to folks, that, well, it can't be recreated. Well, no, it can't, but it happened. And
right.
You know what I mean? So I think the people that I think it requires the folks that are going out there, like you on that show, and my friend Caleb, and the folks that he has on his podcast, going out there and saying, hey, this is exactly what I experienced. I know what I felt. I know what I heard. I know what I saw. And owning that, and not letting anybody take that away from you, is so important.
Right.
And I really think that folks like that and that are doing that has really helped propel the field even further. Mm-hmm. Because now people are like, okay, well, there's so many people saying these same things, that the experiences that they're having, maybe this is worth looking into, or being more open-minded about. Even that would be a wonderful, huge thing. Yeah. So
no, I agree with you with that. Before we it's really cool that we're talking shop and talking about all this great stuff in the paranormal, which I'm a kid in a cookie jar when it comes to this stuff, because I can talk all night, all day with this. But this is about you, and you're a podcast. You run a podcast. What's your podcast about? Tell everybody the name of your podcast. What brought you guys together to do your particular podcast?
So our podcast is called History of a Haunting, and we are we've been doing it for a little over a year now. So I think episode 64, 65 is coming out this Saturday.
Nice.
But we talk about the infamous and the famous and the almost famous locations, haunted locations all over the world. So we have, our format is, it's me and Archie, and now we have a third co-host. Her name is Laura. She brings a skeptic's perspective, but Archie starts the show out, and he does a really good, thorough research of the location that we're doing. And then I come in and I talk about the hauntings that are a result of the history of the place.
Nice.
So it's been a lot of fun. We have gotten so many wonderful listener suggestions of locations that I had never even heard of. Archie's never even heard of. Eloise Asylum in Michigan was one of them. And it was phenomenal. So we love it because a lot of the compliments and the reviews and stuff that we get from folks, they feel like they're sitting around with, a couple of friends talking about the paranormal, talking about their their favorite locations. Plus, they really like the history part of it. They like that because they always find out something new about their favorite haunted locations that they didn't know. And so there's so many paranormal podcasts out there, and I love them. They're so wonderful. Everybody's got a different take and a different twist. I've kind of yet to find a podcast that's quite like ours in that, because we are a comedy podcast. We sit around and have drinks and we talk about, all of these different things. And we kind of joke about it, and we try to bring a little levity to the situation, because some of these locations that we talk about have had horrible things, like the LaLaurie Mansion,
right?
And Trans Allegheny, and some of these asylums that horrible, terrible things have happened. So we certainly want to bring a little bit of levity to that. We're obviously, we're not making fun of anybody that lived in those times or was victims of crimes and things like that. But you try
to make light of it.
You got to make light of it. Yeah. Like some of these locations, there's, I think in the Stanley Hotel, there's a cowboy in one of the rooms that likes to just kind of watch you from the room. And I'm like, no, don't love that. Get out of, quit watching me sleep. Like, we just kind of try to like make it light and fun. And it's, it seems to be doing well. We found our niche, we found our audience, and our listeners are amazing and wonderful. And they're just as sarcastic and goofy as we are. And so it's really
nothing wrong with that. No, nothing wrong with that.
Nothing at all.
You got to have fun with what you do, and you got to be unique and try to stand out. Otherwise, people wouldn't listen to the show.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
If it was boring, they're like, I don't want to listen to that,
Yeah. We've actually only gotten one bad review where they said that it was boring because they didn't like the history part of it. Like, they were like, this is boring. And I'm like, okay, well, it's called History of a Haunting, so you probably should have known that coming in, but thanks for this try.
I always tell people, believe it or not, like, history is important when you do these locations, investigating, and not only just investigating part of it, but like you said, you learn a lot of stuff that you never knew about that location. I've learned so much history about certain locations that I've been to, and especially in my own neighborhood, that I never knew about, that I never learned in school. So I've actually been learning more with the paranormal as far as history goes. And they don't teach you that stuff in school. You know what I mean? They teach you the basic, Common Core, whatever it is that, they give now. But
it really is amazing. And Archie he's our historian. And so he does such a wonderful, wonderful job, because Archie, he believes in the paranormal, but he's also a kind of a healthy skeptic. And a lot of these, locations he's never heard of, he's never, so he goes and does this history, and he just kind of pulls together, because some of it is just so rich. There's just pages and pages of it.
Oh yeah.
He pulls together like the pertinent parts and the highlights and what he finds interesting.
Right.
And he really enjoys doing the history part of it. When we came together, and the idea was born out of one drunk night. And I had found podcasts, and I was like, you know what? We could totally have a podcast ourselves. And so I called Archie, and I'm like, let's do a paranormal podcast. And he's like, how drunk are you? And I'm like, well, kind of, but it's a good idea. So he's like, well, how would the format be? And I said, well, let's ask our friends. Like, do they want to hear a podcast about, the paranormal where maybe like we debunk it, or do they want to hear more about the history, or do they want to hear, what do they want to hear? And they said that they wanted to hear more about the history. And he's like, I'll take that part. And I'm like, okay, I'll take the ghost. So
nice.
It really just came together really, really well. So.
Yeah. I mean, the history is really important, because just because a place is scary and old and historic it doesn't necessarily mean it's haunted because of that reason.
Exactly.
It could have activity because of the things that occurred way back, and there are other stories that you learn about, and that brings a whole nother ball game in life to that location. And that's what is causing the activity, and that's what people need to learn, because if you learn that part of it, then you can interact with that part of that, and that what gets you really good evidence because you're paying attention to that research.
Right, exactly. If you're trying to find, the ghost of somebody that, died there, but they've crossed over and there was actually more that went on either before they were there or after they were there, and you don't know that. Well, like I said earlier, they don't, show up on command. They don't, whatever. If you're, it's very similar to, folks that use trigger objects. If you start talking about the era that they lived in and what happened to them, the zone that they lived in, you probably more likely to get some interaction.
Right.
I completely agree.
Yeah, no, totally. Because if you learn about what they did in the past, and like what their work was or why they were there, what happened to them, you're giving them recognition. And when you start giving them recognition, then they're going to interact with you, and you're going to get evidence.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing is that don't assume that they are aware that they're dead, because maybe they are not. One of the things that Tony and Cherie and Chris and Audra taught me when investigating the Phelps Dodge Hospital is ask them what year it is.
Right.
Maybe for them it's still 1921 or, so I think the more research you can do on a place and the further back that you go, the more armed and prepared you'll be to conduct a successful paranormal investigation.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, definitely. I mean, and the other thing is too, I don't know about you, but sometimes I go into investigations, especially with the public, and they're asking the same questions over and over and over, like, how did you die?
Right.
Or they ask like this one question where it's like, what's on the other side? You don't know these spirits.
Yes.
They have like no relationship with you. Do you think that stuff that they want to hear to me, not that it's disrespectful, but you're not paying attention to their feelings,
right?
You know what I mean? So that's why it's so important to learn about that stuff about them, because if you don't, like, they're not going to answer you. That's why you're not going to get a response.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that, like you had said, if you do your research and you know about them and you know the kind of work that they did, and then you can strike up a sort of affinity with them, I think that that's very key. I also think that if you go in and you've done your research, especially in a place like Trans-Allegheny,
right,
where one of the gentlemen that was housed there was very mentally ill, and he got put into a room with two criminally insane men who murdered him.
Yeah.
To go into Trans-Allegheny to do a paranormal investigation and then try to antagonize the man that was murdered, no. And then get upset when you're not getting, it's disrespectful, and then you're probably also scaring him. So then get mad that he's not giving you EVPs or he's not, making a noise or what have you. Work smarter and not harder is really like my main takeaway from most of the training that I get from Tony and Cherie and Chris and Audra is think about what you're doing and think about where you're at and think about if you're in their home.
Yeah.
You got to be respectful.
Sure.
You're in their home. And so I'm not a big fan of the antagonistic method of investigation.
Yeah, we're not either. We go in with as much respect as possible, with the utmost, professional, respectful way, because they have feelings. They were people like me and you, and how would you like to be treated? And I don't want to treat them disrespectfully or get them pissed off, and I don't want a negative spirit to come running at me, choke me out, and you know.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't, especially because I'm so new. I haven't had that happen yet.
I haven't either, knock on wood.
Knock on wood. And I know that there are some situations that you find yourself in where, you might do all the right things.
Right.
You might be as respectful as possible, but you're just going to run into a negative entity that is, they're not having it. And they want to be mischievous, and they want to hurt you, and they want to attach to you. And that's sort of a caveat on what we were saying. Like, certainly don't go and antagonize them, because then if it happens, well, maybe you should have been nicer. But at the same time, you could be as nice as pie, and it might still happen. So I want to throw that out there too.
Yeah, because I love the people that come running out going, I got scratched. Why? Because you antagonize them. You encouraged it to happen. So, like Chris Allgood, he's in the chat, and like you said, be careful what you ask for.
Yeah.
So I want to quick mention, to a couple of people in the chat. Real quick, I want to say hello to there's a Jen Bowman D. Simone. I don't know if I pronounced her name correctly.
Yes, Jen DeSimone. She's my friend who lives in the haunted house.
Oh, nice. Yeah, we got Chris Allgood is in the chat. What's up, Chris? And we also have Audra in the chat. Tony Rathman's in there as well. So I want to say hello to those guys. Guys, thanks for coming and listening to the show tonight. Really appreciate it. Yes, yeah, we're talking shop. We were talking a little bit, if you guys are just tuning in late, with Miss Carrie Hopper from History of a Haunting Podcast. What nights do you run your podcast? Like, where do people can listen to your show? And
our episodes drop every Saturday morning at 7 a.m. Arizona time. So not necessarily Mountain Time, but yeah, Arizona time. Right now we're 2 hours behind the East Coast. So. Nice. Every Saturday morning at 7 a.m. And then all of our Patreons get our episodes early on Wednesdays before the episodes drop. Yeah.
Nice. And once again, I want to welcome Entity Voices Podcast to the KGRA radio family. Yeah, they recently joined KGRA Radio. They're on Monday nights, 9 p.m. Central Time. And, congratulations to those guys for being a part of that.
They deserve it. They really, really, really do deserve it. I cannot. When Tony and Sheree told me, I was like, "Oh my God!" Like it's amazing. They're gonna go so far. It's just a really phenomenal bunch of people.
Yeah, and I also just a real quick shout out to Bill Forte of KGRA Network. Reached out to me and supported me when I was sick with COVID, and I want to thank him and his family and everybody at KGRA, for their support of during our time of COVID that we had. And thank you, Bill, for reaching out to us. So anyway, what's up? Gerard Simonelli is also in the chat, and thank you, Chris, for that comment. You guys are awesome. I love you guys. I'm a big fan of the show, Entity Voices Podcast. I love everybody that participates in it. I love Miss Carrie Hopper. You have such a great personality. Don't ever change. I love your approach and your positivity. I think energy and positivity is also important.
Yes.
How you bring that to an investigation.
I think so too. I really think so too. I think if you go into a location and you don't have expectations, that's probably the best way to go into it, is just to kind of hope for the best and enjoy what you're doing while you're there. Think about the building that you're in. Some of these locations are so old and so historic. It's like, don't lose sight of that because you're hoping to catch a ghost. Like, enjoy the entire experience, even if it can be boring, even if it's got you running all over the place. But I just enjoy the entire experience, even if it takes days.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, what frustrates me as a more experienced investigator is, like, when I see investigations and people just kind of like, their expectations are way up here and mine are down here.
Yeah.
And like, I know it takes time to build a relationship with that location and its spirit. And you have these newbies who go in and they just want something right away. They want something on demand, and then they get bored, or they don't believe because nothing's happening. It doesn't work that way.
It really, really doesn't. And when I when I had done my solo tour of the Phelps Lodge Hospital on Halloween, when Tony and Cherie were doing the Queen Mary with the Dark Zone, it was Halloween and it was a full moon. There was just all the right stuff going on, and we had such an active night, which was phenomenal. Downside of that was the group then has that expectation that like everywhere they go to investigate, oh my God, this is amazing. And it is just like on TV. And I got to remind him like, no, not really. Like it was just that right combination of stuff that night.
Right.
That hospital, it really doesn't ever disappoint, but it was the most active I had ever seen it.
Right.
So it's you're not going to get the same investigation every single time. You're just
you're not. No. And the other thing is, like, you don't go to these locations as much as the people that work there all the time, and the people that are there all the time. So they're going to get better interaction because those spirits got to know them and they built a relationship with that location.
Absolutely.
I find, like, for me, like, I have a location in New Jersey called Kingsland Manor, and we work very closely with this place in Jersey. And I've been going there for years, and it's been so consistently active. And I think it's because we've been building a really good relationship with the spirits there and giving them the recognition because of all the research that not only the historian there, but the evidence that we brought together with our method and our style and our communication that we bring with the historian. And the place is so alive. It's like it just amazes me all the time. We have different experiences there all the time.
And it's called Kingsland Manor?
Kingsland Manor. Yeah. KINGLANDMANOR. Kingsland Manor.
I'm going to have to add that to our list because I haven't heard of that place.
Yeah, that's in Nutley, New Jersey. Amazing. Yeah, no, you definitely, we'll invite you out one night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love that.
Yeah.
I think you're right. We've covered a lot of locations. Like, again, I'm going to go back to Trans-Allegheny. That their tour staff, they give like historical tours of Trans-Allegheny. They do paranormal tours, but they too have developed a relationship with a lot of these spirits. There's a little girl that is in Trans-Allegheny that they believe is the daughter of a nurse. I think her name was Lily. And she loves the staff. She always interacts with the staff. She's developed that relationship. And by extension, the staff is very protective of Lily. Mm-hmm. And so they don't want investigators going in and taunting her. And, if they know that she doesn't like her toys to be played with in a certain way, they don't let them do that.
Right.
So I think it's a very cohesive, symbiotic relationship between the living and the dead in locations like that. They, which is so purposeful, and I think is so amazing that you can have a relationship like that with these souls.
Yeah,
that's what they are. They're souls, and I really think it's wonderful. There's a number of spirits at the hospital in Ajo that know Tony and Cherie and Chris and Audra and because they've been investigating that place for so long, so often, that they too have a relationship with Michael and Mary, and I find it so amazing and wonderful that
cool.
You can develop that.
Yeah, totally. At Kingsland, like for me, like the way we like the spirits there have gotten to know our energy and vice versa. So, I think that's one of the reasons why we've gotten consistently active in that particular location. And I've always tried to encourage Kingsland to bring other paranormal groups there to see what they can experience and get evidence of, and but then the owners will turn around and tell me, well, we're kind of afraid of bringing in outsiders because you guys have such a unique relationship with what's there that we're afraid of kind of like interfering with that. and because you don't know like what other people are into as far as like
Sure.
like what backgrounds they're into. Some people are
Right.
into they conjure things different ways, and
That's
you
a
don't
good
want that
point.
kind of like negative like outsider energy to kind of like disrupt something good.
Right. Yeah. That's very well put. That's very well put. So what is your take on that? What are your thoughts on their
Well,
concern?
I did actually. At first, I was like, I was always encouraging them to try to bring in extra income to help,
Sure.
raise money for their establishment because they're a private location. They're not run by the state or anything like that. They're a
Yeah.
private entity. So I was trying to think of ways to raise money for them so that maybe by offering other groups outside of paranormal investigations other than us.
Right.
But then I changed my tune because then, my wife and I thought about it more and we're like, I kind of agree with them that I don't know if I exactly want to change those things because, something might change and I don't know if that's good or bad.
That's really good. That's a really good point. That's a really good point.
Right.
If Tina and Chris are still in the chat, I'd be interested to see what their take is on something like that.
Actually, Chris is saying, you could compromise your evidence and upset the spirits, which is, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was just.
It's dead on because you don't know what these folks are into or what their intention is when they go in there, and if they were to be left alone in a room or what have you, what they're doing, and it would be really, really unfortunate and upsetting if they were to kind of break down everything that you guys have built in a relationship with those folks.
Real quick, I'll tell a story actually, because we were doing a public investigation with Kingsland Manor, and we had a group that I wasn't with the group. I was with a different group. That same night, I had a different group with me.
Sure. Okay.
And they had this doll in the children's room on the second floor, and they brought the doll in from the outside. One of the staff members brought it in because somebody didn't want to just throw it away. They were like, "Well, we'll just donate it to Kingsland Manor. They'll give it to them and they'll take care of it."
I'm already nervous. I'm like,
I know. So this doll gets put in this children's room, and so like that month or I forget when we did the public investigation after that had happened, but there was this woman that everybody got this bad vibe of, that something happened. She had an experience with the doll, and somebody thought that there was a negative attachment with the doll, or the person who came in with the public investigation brought something with them that attached to the doll, and there was nothing to the doll until after that. And I couldn't believe it because after that was done, we went back a while back later, and we've been getting a lot of activity in that room now ever since that happened. Yeah, it's crazy.
Oh my gosh.
I actually caught on photo the doll's head turning.
What is this? What kind of doll is this? It's
an old vintage doll. It's like
a porcelain face doll?
Maybe porcelain. I'm not quite sure. But it had like blonde curly hair, kind of short. And I was taking consecutive photos, and as an investigator, you take consecutive photos, and you can, you need consecutive photos to compare them, to what's around the environment, what could have caused something if you get something in the photo. And I wasn't the one who noticed it, but one of my friends, Anthony Simonelli, pointed out, he's like,
he's a lovely man, by the way.
Yeah, Anthony's a great friend. He's like, dude, that head turned. Look, he did like a side-by-side comparison, and you can actually see the bangs of the hair like in a different position. And I'm like, no way.
Oh my god, yeah. I mean, I hear stuff like that, and I think that would be terrifying. But at the same time, I'm like, it's probably going to happen to me one day, and I need to just sort of, not scream and freak out.
Yeah, you got to try. I don't care how long you've been doing this. Sometimes it's hard to keep your composure.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it really is. It was funny too because I had gotten touched. A spirit touched my face when we were at the 1910 jail with Tony and Cherie, and I remember thinking in my head, "Don't scream and run out! Don't scream and run out!" Because I want Tony and Cherie to invite me to other places, and if I scream and run out like I want to do, they won't. So it was, it is very, very hard. Like I was like, don't bite your tongue off, don't freak out, don't wet your pants, like be cool.
Yeah.
It's hard. It really is hard.
Yeah, it is.
Well, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for stuff like that.
I know.
You want something like that to happen, but when it does, it's jarring.
Yep. There was one time, the first time I ever got touched at Kingsland Manor, I had something pull my shirt. And I was so startled because it really like tugged my shirt like this.
Yeah.
And I've never experienced like anything like that in my whole time I've been investigating. And I actually had to collect myself, go outside and get air.
I don't doubt it. Were you in a room by yourself? Did you like there was nobody behind you?
I had a couple other people with me. Anthony Simonelli was with me. I think his brother Gerard was with me, and another person was there. So I had witnesses, and they could tell like how startled I was.
Oh God, yeah, I just can't. I mean, I know it's going to happen, but like you said, sometimes it's really hard to keep your composure.
Yeah, you know,
things like that.
We're all gonna have a dude run moment.
1,000%. I just really hope. I really hope I don't ever have a dude run moment. I'm gonna want to have a bunch of them.
Yeah,
but I hope I don't because
right. So what's some of your what's on your bucket list as far as stuff that you haven't done so far? Is there any locations that you're interested in doing?
You know, yes, Waverly Hills is one of them. Now that I'm going to be moving back to the East Coast, there are my gosh,
a lot of places. Yeah,
so many places. So Waverly Hills is certainly one of them. I would love to stay at the Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast.
It's for sale again, by the way.
It's for sale again, yes. And I certainly hope that whoever buys it keeps it as it is and lets people spend the night there and do all of that. That's a bucket list thing for sure. Eastern State.
If you have $900,000, you could buy it.
You know, I was really hoping I was going to win the Powerball or the Mega Millions, and there's somebody in Iowa that has like the sole winning ticket that won it last night. And I'm like, It wasn't me. Otherwise, I absolutely would buy both of those places. That Lizzie Borden and Maplecroft, I would buy them for sure. So definitely going there. Eastern State, of course. There's a lot of really cool places in North Carolina and South Carolina. I've been very fortunate this year, even with COVID and things like that, to have crossed off Alcatraz. I got to see Alcatraz.
Nice.
When I went there. We got to see the Winchester Mystery House. They had reopened, and then when California spiked, they had to close back down. So we were able to kind of get in right at the time that they were open. So I got to see that. Whaley House, the El Campo Santo Cemetery. I was fortunate enough to see that. The Jerome Grand Hotel up here in Jerome, Arizona is an amazing place. I have so many locations.
I know there's so many.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that with the vaccine and hopefully COVID will chill out, that I will be able to tick off a bunch of boxes in 2021. Now that I'm going to be living back east. So
yeah, right. Yeah,
and now I've got Kingsland Manor on my list. So
yeah. And April 17th, I hope you and Chris and Audra come to our event at St. Albans. St. Albans Sanitarium. We're having an event called EnigmaCon, and it's I think only a couple hours from where they are.
Really? Yeah. So they are. I think they're like an hour and a half south of me.
Okay.
But St. Albans. Wow, I've heard of that place.
Yeah,
I've heard of that place.
Yeah, I can't wait. Bedford Paranormal is running the event. My friend Ronnie Anderson and Alan May and them, those guys from West Virginia and Virginia area. I met those guys years ago at Virginia Beach. I did an event called Epicon back in 2009, 2010. I've been friends with them ever since. And, they asked me to come speak, and I was like, hell yeah, I'm going to come to St. Albans. I've never been. So it's definitely a place that I would put on your bucket list.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. You said it's in April?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That would be really amazing. I know that there's so many of these different Paracons that I want to go to, and Sam Baltrusis is actually going to be, I think it's VultureCon here in Wickenburg in October, and I was like, oh sure, I'm moving from Arizona, and then he's going to be here.
Yeah.
So, fortunately, I have a job that allows me to. I work from home, so I can telecommute from pretty much anywhere in the world. So hopefully, like I said, the vaccines and COVID chills out, and we can get back to traveling and investigating some of our favorite locations and experience new ones. And I have a lot of hope for 2021 and a lot of faith that things are going to get back to normal soon. So
Anthony Simonelli just joined the chat. He says hello to Carrie, and I want to say hello to Anthony Simonelli. What's up, buddy? Saying hello. And I don't know, guys, you have questions for Miss Carrie, let me know. We're at the bottom of the show, so I'll take some questions if you guys have any questions for her. Shoot your message, and I'll do my best to give the question to Miss Carrie. I don't know, so what's your future plans? Like, what's your goal? And as a new investigator, like, what are your plans?
I would very much like to get partner with a professional paranormal group and become one of the team, go on different investigations, continue learning from Chris and Audra and Tony and Cherie and Ron and Lourdes, and that's really what I want to do. I would love, the podcast is going really strong. I would love to see that grow. I definitely, all of the things that I learn from, I've been reading some of Sam Baltrusis's books, and watching interviews with folks like Anthony Simonelli and Keith Bailey and all of these amazing people in the field. And I take back some of the most fascinating things that they get asked or that they say or experiences that they have, and I take that back to the podcast for our listeners, for the folks that they want to become a paranormal investigator and they're not really sure how to do it. And I'll let them know, hey, you know what? It's a lot of heavy equipment lugging. It's sometimes it's boring. Sometimes it's very physically demanding. I want people to know how it really is and not just portrayed on a show. So I hope the podcast continues. I hope maybe you guys will see us at a Paracon one day.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think that could be a possibility, hopefully in April.
I think that would be wonderful. Would be wonderful. There's really no limit to what I want to experience and do, and the folks that I want to meet and kind of pick their brains and learn from the best. So no, definitely. There's a lot more learning too, and I've always said it's a learning field. There's so much that we can still learn. It's all experimental. We can't prove things scientifically right now, but there's still a lot out there on the table that you shouldn't just dismiss. There's a lot of interesting theories to discuss, and to me, it's a fun field. It's a learning field, it is.
And there's just so much more to it than just what you saw was nothing. No, there's a lot more to it than just that.
Right, exactly. And I feel like everybody that I've met so far has been so welcoming, and so I feel like there's a kinship with everybody, even new folks in the industry, because we're all on the same team. We're all working toward the same goal, in proving this, and we're all fighting against people that think we're crazy and that we're making it up, and we're so I have to say that the folks that are in this industry, you guys and the Entity Voices group and Sam and Keith, everybody is so welcoming and friendly and willing to share their knowledge.
Yeah.
Willing to share their knowledge. Nobody's stingy with it. Nobody's like, sorry, it's not for you. Nothing like that. So.
Yeah. I mean, to me, like there should be unity, there should be more working together, and everybody brings something different to the table. I used to be very competitive when I was younger, but not anymore. Like the more I've gotten older, I've realized that there's more knowledge out there, and I can pass on my experience and my knowledge to newer people,
Right.
and I get enjoyment out of that myself. And I teach and I do public speaking, and there's so much to learn. It's like, and I feel like we've only reached like the little tip of the iceberg, like this much of it. And we may not find out things in our lifetime right now, but hopefully the newer generation of people will. And,
right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Just like when you were saying you've been doing this for 20 years, like the things that you started 20 years ago, other people are like, they're taking that step from you, and
right.
you're kind of setting that stage. It's also very important. It's also very important.
So now everybody that's new, I'm raising the bar for you.
1,000%. Yeah, 1,000%.
So, all right. So real quick, what would be your advice towards other new investigators with what you've learned so far? What would be your advice to people who are just starting out?
My advice would be to do your research, for sure. Don't ever, 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 ever go and investigate a location by yourself, especially at night. One thing that I have learned and been told, and things that I've read and things that I've seen, is that the living are very, very much more dangerous to a paranormal investigator than the dead. So definitely go with a buddy. Mm-hmm. And just be prepared for some there's going to be some boring times. It's not all, EVPs and things banging and doors slamming. Be patient. And I would say those would be my pieces of advice. And then use the tried and true, an EVP recorder, an EMF detector. You don't have to like save up thousands of dollars for an SLS camera or any of this high fancy technology. Get a couple of dowsing rods and go. I mean,
right.
Be safe about it. Definitely be safe about it.
You definitely want to have a budget.
Yes. Absolutely. In fact, I'm always telling Archie, I want to get this and I want to get that. And he's like, okay, but like the budget and the Patreon bank account, and you gotta like stay within that. And I'm like, I know.
Yeah. You gotta choose your battles.
You really do. You really do.
Yeah. I know. I'm like, I'm jealous of people who are like retired and can do it, because then like they don't have to worry about their jobs and taking time off, and I'll get to that point one day, but I'm a little far from that.
I'm a little far from that too. Yeah, eventually I would love to be able to retire and then just travel the world and see some of these amazing locations. But for now, I'm just gonna save for my house and
right.
Where I can.
Yeah. My other advice to new investigators would be, honestly, when you investigate, especially private homes, a lot of people are into doing private home investigations with like psychics and stuff.
Sure.
Right. One of the things that bother me is you really need to be careful with the agenda of the homeowner, because it can get people into a lot of trouble. And I've seen it happen in the past. I've seen it happen on the news. Right. For example, there was a case in New Jersey, and I bring this up a lot during my lectures, where the homeowner, there was a family that was renting from a landlord, and they were moving in. They didn't know it was haunted. They didn't know that it had ghosts. So they brought in a paranormal group to go and investigate and see what they had in their house. Okay. They supposedly caught a bowling pin falling over by itself on the floor. They caught some kind of like orby thing on video, and it wasn't really solid evidence. Sure. And now I can turn around and tell people, you know what? The landlord now, because if they wanted their money back because they didn't know that it was active and it had ghosts, so they tried to get their money back, and they're going to go to court. The court's going to laugh at them, number one, because they can't prove this stuff in court. You know what I mean? Yeah, the devil made me do it kind of thing. Yeah. The twister is the landlord could turn around and sue them for bringing the quality or price down or value of the house if he's trying to sell it. By attaching that idea that the place is
right.
I don't know what, like, each state has its different like laws with that stuff.
It does, yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Those are excellent points. I feel like it's going to take me a long time. I want to make sure that I really, really, really know my stuff before I would even venture into investigating a private residence, unless it's somebody that I know. Unless I'm going to go to, my best friend Jennifer's house and be like, hey, Jen, you know what? You definitely got a ghost here. We all know it. Let's do an investigation.
Right.
But somebody that I don't know, yeah, that's really tricky. It opens up a lot of liability issues.
Right.
That I feel like I'd have to have some insurance kind of a thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. If you can afford the insurance, yeah.
Right, exactly. Far above my newbie paranormal investigator pay grade.
Yeah, it wouldn't hurt.
It probably wouldn't.
Yeah. So, but then, whatever team members I have in my group will be asking me for insurance, and I'm sorry, I can't afford insurance.
Yeah.
I don't have there's no hazard pay in ghost hunting.
It really isn't. And gosh, wow, that just opens up such a huge, totally different can of worms.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chris Holgood wrote legal waivers. Waivers do not always hold up in a court of law.
Nah.
Unless you have a really good attorney. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, we did a podcast event at the hospital, and so they have the groups, the tours that go there, sign a waiver, and so we did as well. I think that works a little bit better in a public place like the hospital, or
it depends what it's used for, right?
Right, yeah. I don't know. I can't even begin to scratch the surface of any sort of suggestion about a private residence, I think.
Right.
The shows that like Ghost Adventures and Ghost Hunters and things like have the backing of the Travel Channel. Like they handle all of that. You know what I mean? They're handling all of that.
Oh yeah. They're covered by that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. But yeah, to like actually have a team and be doing this and be reached out by somebody that you don't know is, yeah, that's.
Yeah, hopefully I brought up some good points, as far
absolutely, yeah, you absolutely did. Absolutely did. I can't wait to share them on our podcast and let our listeners know, hey.
Yeah. By the way, there's just some things you can think about.
Right. Yeah. Don't be charging into random homes if somebody says, hey, I think I got a ghost.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But it's good to bring up because I brought it, like I said, I've used it in lectures, and I've had people come up to me and say, I've never thought of that before,
Yeah, certainly not. Certainly not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'll stick with the Waverly Hillses of the world.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree. Like, if you're gonna do it through somebody like word of mouth, referral. We only take referrals and word of mouth. Like we work with a couple of psychics. Sometimes we get cases from, the psychics that we work closely with.
Sure,
and they'll give us cases because they're busy, with their stuff. And they'll be like, can you go and investigate for me? Check this, while I'm busy. I can't get to them right away. So can you guys help them out in the meantime?
Right. Yeah. That's wonderful. Like a partnership kind of referral.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. But I haven't really done a private home in a long time. I tend to stay away from them because it gets very personal. Sometimes it becomes a headache because the family wants to bring other family members to spectate. They think it's a circus or a show because they watch the TV show. And I used to get a lot of cases because of the TV shows, because now there are things that people never thought of because they've seen it on TV. So they hear a little creak in the house and now they think they have a ghost.
Right. Yeah.
But anyway, well, I can't believe an hour flew by. We're 8 minutes past 9 o'clock. Talked about so much. Again, just tell our viewers and listeners where they can listen to your podcast. What weekday? Give them all the information.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find us on all of your favorite podcast stations. We are on Apple Podcasts. We are on Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Spotify, TuneIn. We're everywhere. And all new episodes are Saturday mornings at 7 a.m. Arizona time. And then we're on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and patreon.com, all at HOAH Podcast.
Nice. You guys have a website or?
We do, hoahpodcast.com.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
and you can also listen to episodes there on our website as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So well, I look forward to listening to your show. I wish you luck on it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, and again, thank you so much for, being on the Strange Oddities podcast. I had a lot of fun. I think it was a fun conversation.
I did too. Thank you so much for having me. This has been such a wonderful honor. Thank you.
Yeah. So before Carrie says goodbye to our audience, do you have any last words?
Do I have any last words, or does the
Any
audience?
last words?
I am going to say that my last words are going to be stay safe out there because you never know who or what is listening.
Yeah, good advice. All right. So Carrie, stay on with me. We'll say our goodbyes after I, end the show here. I'm just gonna, minimize you. I'm gonna shrink you down to my little, menu down here. So
all right, bye guys.
All right. I hope everybody enjoyed Miss Carrie Hopper. Check her podcast out Saturday mornings. And guys, it's history of a haunting podcast. All right, there you go. All right. So I'll catch you in a couple minutes.
Okay.
All right, guys. I really appreciate everybody's support that was in the chat room tonight. We had Ronnie Anderson, Chris Allgood, Audra, Tony Rathman, everybody from pretty much Entity Voices podcast. Thanks for tuning in and supporting the show tonight. Anthony Simonelli, what's up, bud? Gerard was in there. Mr. Gary Greener, a.k.a. Roy Poole, was there. Guys, thank you so much. Yeah, it's great to be back. I was on hiatus because I had COVID. Feeling much better. I lost like 20 pounds. I know on camera it doesn't look like I lost 20 pounds, but believe me, I lost a lot of weight. Anyway, at least I got something good out of it, right? I'm back at work. It's good to be back on the podcast. Again, thank you for your tremendous support. Those who, reached out to me to ask me how we were doing every day. We love you guys, really from the bottom of my heart. Guys, have a great night. Be safe out there. Be well. Next week, guys, I have a guest, Tobias Whalen. He wrote the book Lake Michigan Mothman, and we're going to talk about the Mothman. And I can't wait because I'm a fan of the Mothman. There's all kinds of sightings all over Chicago, Lake Michigan, of course, Ohio, and Virginia, and there was a movie, Mothman Prophecies, with Richard Gere. I'm a big fan of the Mothman in cryptozoology, and I'm going to have author Tobias Whalen. He's kind of a researcher of the Mothman in the Lake Michigan area. So he's got a book out, and so we're going to have him next week. So that'll be January 28th. So January 28th, Tobias Whalen. So guys, have a great night. I'm going to go ahead and play the video. Hope you guys enjoy the new video. I put together something new for 2021. Hope you guys enjoy it.